Tonight I'll read Chapter 7, The Gatekeeper. Sam picked up the rock again. Tonight I'll read Chapter 7, The Gatekeeper. Sam picked up the rock again, but before he had a chance to use it, the grill was thrust open once more. "Where's the Wyrm wolf?" Sam looked puzzled. "Dressed in black, carries a spear. The Wyrm wolf." "We brought him back. He's been shot," Emily said, her words tumbling out. "He's terribly injured. You've got to help him. He's down in the boat, unconscious, I think." There was a series of metallic clunking sounds from the door, and it started to swing outwards. Emily and Sam stepped back. The door opened to reveal a stout, short monk wearing a dark brown habit. He had a bald head, a big white beard, and craggy features. A large bunch of keys hung heavily from a cord around his waist. His expression was grim. Another, taller monk stood behind him, his old face stern. The gatekeeper muttered to himself as they went down the stairs to the boat. "That's bad news. Who would shoot the Wyrm wolf? Only doing God's work." He helped the taller monk lift the warrior carefully out of the boat. A third monk appeared at the doorway with an old stretcher. He carried it down the steps, and together they lifted the warrior gently onto it. "Take the Wyrm wolf to the infirmary. Old Treewick will know what to do. Quickly now." The two monks carried the laden stretcher up the steps and disappeared through the doorway, leaving the gatekeeper shaking his head and Emily and Sam looking at each other nervously. "You kids helped the Wyrm wolf, did you?" The gatekeeper turned to them. "Well done. That's good work." He frowned and glanced at his watch, then looked at Emily and Sam with concern. "Do your parents know you're out? It's very late." With a sudden shock, Emily remembered that her father expected her to be at home. Was he already there, wondering where she was? She remembered the horrible anxiety she had felt when he'd not returned home on time earlier that evening. Was that what her dad was feeling for her at this very moment? Or was he still heading back home, and there was still time for her to get there before him? "I have to go home," she blurted. "Right now." The old gatekeeper considered her gravely. "Where do you live, miss?" "Eel Way. We both live there." "Next door neighbours," said Sam. "Eel Way. That's out towards the Oxbow, near the library." They nodded. "Good. Follow me." He led them up the steps and through the old door, which he shut and locked behind them. Beyond the door was a narrow tunnel, which opened out onto a large, semicircular hallway. It was stone-built and had a low, vaulted roof. Lanterns cast a warm glow across the tiled floor and lit up the faces of carvings at the top of the pillars that supported the vaults. Heavy wooden doors were set all along the inside of the curve. In the middle of the opposite wall was a much larger iron door, dark with age. Emily guessed that beyond it lay the abbey itself. They followed the old gatekeeper across the tiled floor. Sam cast hopeful looks at the large door opposite that led to the abbey, but the gatekeeper ignored him and led them to a door near the middle of the curve. As soon as he unlocked and opened it, they were surrounded by the white noise of rushing water and the hollow rumble of heavy wooden machinery. They went down a short tunnel which opened out onto a small, dimly lit space beyond. On the left, a huge water wheel turned, driven by water tumbling from a wide lead pipe above. The noise was deafening, and they could feel the floor vibrating as the water wheel revolved. Ancient-looking wooden cogs and shafts ran off it towards a mechanism at the far end of the room. On the right, the platform dropped down to a pair of iron rails that led into a tunnel. Between the rails was a third toothed rail. A strange vehicle sat on the rails next to the platform. It looked like a couple of long church pews bolted together back to back and mounted lengthways on a metal wheeled trolley. Emily and Sam stared at it apprehensively. They were supposed to ride that thing. It looked spectacularly dangerous. "Hop on, then," urged the old gatekeeper. "Time don't wait for no man or child." Emily and Sam climbed on board nervously. There were no seat belts, just iron rings set into the armrests. Sam sat at the front. The gatekeeper pointed to a lever by Sam's right hand. "When you hear the 6th bell, pull this here lever hard," he said. "You'll stop near some stairs. Go up the stairs and follow the tunnel. When you come to the door, look through the spy hole. If there's no one around, then go through. You'll be as close to your home as I can get you." Then his expression changed, and he looked at them fiercely under his bushy eyebrows. "Don't tell anyone about what you saw here tonight. And don't try and find your way back down here, you understand? We're thankful for you helping the Wormwolf, but it is only through our tunnels remaining secret that we can continue our holy work. You must swear not to tell anyone about them." He took out an old prayer book from his pocket and held it out to them. It had a pale cover and was stamped in gold with the same upwelling symbol that had been on the new linnet's panels. "Swear on the book of water that you will keep our secrets." They duly put their hands on the book and swore. It felt very odd to Emily, swearing on the holy book of religion she knew nothing about and didn't believe in. But even so, the solemnity of the moment, with the noise from the water wheel crashing in her ears, was powerful. Once they had sworn, the gatekeeper put away the book and went over to a clutch of levers sticking up out of the floor. He grasped one and pulled it forward. There was a series of clunks as various cogs and gears shifted into position. "One last thing," he shouted. "After you've got off, turn the brake handle around and then release it, so I can get my trolley back. Now, hold on tight." And with that, he yanked a second lever hard towards him. Instantly, the trolley shot off up the track into the tunnel, nearly spilling Emily and Sam from their precarious seats. The tunnel was unlit, except for the occasional dim glow of streetlight that filtered down a shaft from a dusty skylight high above. They clung on desperately to the iron handholds, unable to see ahead in the darkness, and constantly being thrown back and forth by unexpected shifts in direction. A couple of times they felt the stomach-churning sensation of weightlessness, and even lifted momentarily out of their seats as the trolley took a sudden dip downwards, making Emily fear that if she happened to let go just then, she would fly up into the air like a balloon and be splattered against the tunnel roof. The musty, damp air rushed past their faces and left them breathless. The only blessing was that they had left the noise of the water wheel behind, and apart from the rhythmic metallic clattering of the wheels on the rails and a strange high-speed tocking noise that Emily guessed was a cog on the trolley engaging with the toothed rail in the middle of the track, their journey was relatively silent. A flickering light up ahead warned them that they were approaching the first bell. As they hurtled past it, the bell rang with a low, clear sound that Emily found somehow reassuring. They saw the second bell coming up soon afterwards. The third and fourth bells rang unexpectedly in the darkness. Obviously their lights had failed. "5!" shouted Sam as the fifth approached, his words immediately snatched away by the rushing wind. Emily was surprised to see that he was grinning, exhilarated by their wild ride. She braced herself as they hurtled towards a patch of light that signalled the 6th bell. Sam threw the brake lever as soon as the bell rang, and the trolley slowed and then came rapidly to a stop. There was a strong smell of burning from beneath the trolley. It had halted alongside a narrow platform, and they jumped off hastily. Pale smoke started to drift up from under the trolley. There was a bucket half full of slimy water on the platform. Emily picked it up and flung the water as best she could under the trolley. There was a hissing noise, and the smoke stopped. "Stand back," warned Sam. He leaned over, turned the brake handle on the trolley around, as the gatekeeper had instructed, and released it. Instantly, the trolley clattered off back down the tunnel into the darkness. They ran up the steps that led up from the platform and into a tunnel. Emily fished out her torch again as they soon left the light from the platform behind. At the end of the tunnel, a spiral staircase led upwards. They climbed quickly, and by the time they emerged into another very narrow corridor at the top, Emily felt quite dizzy. Sam was panting after the steep ascent. "I hate climbing," he muttered. "I'm sticking to the flat from now on." The corridor was so narrow that several times they had to turn sideways and squeeze crabwise between the mould-stained walls, an unnerving experience in the semi-darkness. Finally, however, the corridor opened out a little, and they reached a rusty iron door. A tiny peephole was set into the door. Emily stood on her tiptoes and peered through it. It was utterly dark outside, and she could see absolutely nothing. She shone the torch on the door. No handle. She tried the wall to the right. It was blank. So how were they supposed to get the door open? Sam tried pushing on it, but it remained stubbornly closed. After a couple of minutes of frantic searching, Emily spotted an iron lever sticking out of the wall above the door, just below the ceiling, and pulled it down. The door slid silently open. Cold night air flooded in around them, and for a moment they breathed in the first fresh air they tasted in what seemed like days. Eagerly, Sam stepped through the doorway and then yelped as he lost his footing and only just managed to grab the door frame to save himself from falling forward. Chastened, he stepped back and let Emily use the torch to see where they were. The doorway opened out a few feet above a small blind backwater of a larger canal. A thin ledge ran along the wall at their feet to the mouth of the backwater. "Hurry," said Sam anxiously. "The door's beginning to close." Emily put the torch in her pocket, turned her back to the opening, and put her left foot on the thin ledge, feeling the wall above her head for a handhold. To her relief, her searching fingers soon found a thick groove in the brickwork that ran along parallel to the ledge below, and hanging on tightly, she quickly moved her other foot onto the ledge and shuffled sideways so that Sam could do the same. Behind him, the door swung shut silently. Emily worked her way along the wall until she came to the corner and peeked around. "What can you see?" whispered Sam. "We're on Eel Way," Emily whispered back, amazed. "Just a few houses up from where we live. How many times have we passed this backwater and not noticed it?" A narrow stoneway ran up the side of the buildings around the corner, leading up to a thin footbridge. Emily jumped from the ledge down onto the stoneway, quickly followed by Sam. She looked back down the canal to her house. She could just make out the landing stage outside the house was empty, and felt a wave of relief as she realized that her father had not yet returned home. "We've got back in time," she whispered. Now all she had to do was cross the footbridge, follow the stoneway round the back of her houses, run down past the gardens to her back door. They ran up the stoneway to the footbridge and were just starting to climb the steep steps when Sam, who was ahead, suddenly dropped to the floor and frantically motioned to Emily to do the same. "What?" "Listen," he whispered. In the distance she heard the metronomic throb of a motor. It rapidly drew closer and lit up the handrails above them with its headlights. Emily felt sick as she recognized the engine noise. There was no doubt. It was the Merlin, her father's boat. The boat passed under the bridge, and as soon as the light was off them, Emily raised her head and stole a glance. Her heart sank even further. Her father wasn't alone. Someone else was on the boat with him. "Odin's eyeballs," swore Sam quietly. "That's Mrs. Harrow. What's she doing with your dad?" "Come on," said Emily desperately. "I can still make it home in time." She fled up the bridge and down the other side. Sam ran behind her, trying to keep up. Emily charged around the corner and down the stoneway to her house. Thank Fry, it was still in darkness. She scrabbled in her pocket for her keys. "Quickly, quickly," urged Sam. She tried her other pockets. No keys. She stared at Sam in horror. "I must have lost them in the canal when that creature attacked us." As she said it, a light went on inside her house. Her father had finally arrived home, and she was locked outside. And that's the end of chapter 7. Good night.